Welcome to the dark side of love. His hand was already under my shirt when the words slipped out. We can't. They sounded foreign, like I was hearing them from someone else's mouth, not mine. But my hips didn't get the message. My back was pressed against the cold metal of the laundry machines, the hum of the dryer vibrating against my spine like a second heartbeat. His body was wedged between my thighs, solid, unyielding. The scent of him, his soap, his skin clung to me, wrapped itself around my senses like a warm rope pulling me in tighter. It was the same sweatshirt I had folded for him 100 times, without a second thought. The same one I'd tossed onto the couch when I saw it left behind. The same one I'd smoothed with my palm while pretending I wasn't imagining the heat of the chest it covered. The dryer thumped behind me, a steady percussion masking the uneven rhythm of our breathing. His breath was warm, steady, ghosting over the curve of my neck. His hands adjusted their grip, and then he pushed further in. I winced not from pain, but from the sharp awareness of just how unprepared I was. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready for him. I wasn't ready for what this would do to me, but I took it anyway. God help me. I wanted it deeper. I wanted to be filled with something, anything that felt alive, that reminded me I still existed beneath the layers of routine and obligation. I'll stop, he murmured, his breath trembling against my ear. Just say the word. I didn't. Instead, I bit my lip and wrapped my legs around him tighter. I never imagined I'd cross this line. Not like this. Not on a Tuesday night in a laundry room that still smelled like dryer sheets and lemon detergent. Not with him. I'm 39. I've been married for 15 years. My husband trusts me enough to leave me alone in the house with a man 10 years younger, someone he thinks of as family, helping us repaint the basement after the spring flood. I call him a boy sometimes, in my head, but that word doesn't quite fit anymore. Not when he looks at me like that. Not when he touches me like this. His name is Adam, 28, my cousin's son, practically raised alongside my family. When his job fell through, he needed a place to reset. My husband offered the basement. I offered meals, laundry, and the kind of small kindnesses you extend without thinking, somewhere between casseroles and folded towels. The way he looked at me changed. Or maybe I just started noticing. I don't remember the exact moment I stopped seeing him as harmless. Maybe it was the night I caught him stepping out of the shower, towel slung low on his hips, water dripping in slow rivulets down his chest. Maybe it was at our New Year's party, when he stayed behind to help me clean after everyone else had gone. We'd been tipsy, sitting too close on the kitchen floor, laughing over some old song on the radio. He asked me then quietly, "Are you happy?" I lied. He didn't call me on it. He just held my gaze a second too long, like he knew the truth and wasn't going to rescue me from it. What would you do if the one person you were supposed to protect was the one you started craving in secret? I hate the word affair. It makes it sound organized, like something with candlelit dinners and whispered declarations. This wasn't planned. It was accidental, then inevitable, then undeniable, and now, it lives in my skin. When I close my eyes, I don't see my husband's face. I see Adam's hands gripping the edge of the washing machine, his mouth hot against my collarbone, his voice cracking with restraint as he breathed. "You feel so full." I nodded, not because I agreed, because I didn't want him to stop. Some secrets don't scream, they whisper constantly, insistently until you can't hear anything else. The next morning, I couldn't meet my own reflection. I stood in the bathroom with my toothbrush in hand, staring at the woman in the mirror, hair tied back, skin pale in the unforgiving light, lips faintly swollen. My thighs ached where he had gripped them. I didn't need reminders. My body remembered everything. Downstairs, my husband hummed over his coffee, scrolling through news headlines like nothing in the world had shifted. The dog scratched at the back door. Same ordinary sounds. Nothing had changed, except everything had. Adam was already gone for his morning jog. I'd heard the screen door shut 20 minutes earlier. I waited until I was sure he was gone before coming down. How do you look someone in the eye after letting them do that to you? We had kissed before once weeks earlier, in the hallway after midnight when the whole house was asleep. I blamed it on wine, on loneliness, on a bad day. I told him it couldn't happen again, and for a while it didn't. We went back to polite. He kept his distance. I smiled too brightly at dinner. I asked about his job search, made jokes about how long the basement paint was taking to dry, but I noticed the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. That wasn't lust. That was gravity. Adam wasn't supposed to stay this long. A few weeks, maybe a month. But the job market dragged on. My husband liked having him around to help with home repairs, and I liked the sound of footsteps on the stairs when I was alone. I liked the way Adam carried the trash out without being asked. The way he said my name, soft as if it mattered. He didn't flirt, but he lingered in conversations in doorways in my mind. One afternoon, I found him in the garage, kneeling on the cement with his hands dusty from dismantling a broken shelf. You really don't have to do all this, I said from the doorway. He squinted against the light, smiled faintly. I know, but it feels good, like I'm useful again. It wasn't a cocky smile. It was the kind that slips under your ribs and settles there. I should have walked away. Instead, I brought him lemonade and sat on the cooler while he worked. We talked about nothing, about everything. He asked me what I had wanted to be before I got married. And no one had asked me that in 20 years. I didn't know what to say. That night, I cried in the shower, not because I'd done something wrong, but because I was starting to want something I couldn't justify. From then on, there was a crack in my routine. I noticed the clock differently. I could tell where he was in the house by the sound of his footsteps. I knew his shampoo scent, the rhythm of his laugh, and I knew, without a shadow of doubt, that if it hadn't happened that night in the laundry room, it eventually would have. We had crossed the point of no return long ago. We just hadn't touched it yet. Part 2: The slow burn after the laundry room. Something inside me rewired itself. We didn't speak about it, not in words, not in the sideways glances that could betray too much. But the air had changed. Everything between us was warmer, slower, thicker. Even silence felt dangerous. Mark, my husband, left early most mornings. Meetings, client calls, the safe, predictable rhythm of a man who believed the world would stay the same simply because it always had. Adam was usually just coming back from his run when I wandered into the kitchen in my robe, hair damp from the shower, coffee mug in hand. We pretended to be surprised to see each other. But we weren't pretending anymore. One morning, I was pulling eggs from the fridge when he reached over me for a glass from the cabinet. The movement was innocent. The feeling was not. His chest was bare, still damp with sweat. His breath brushed my neck. Sorry, he said softly. Didn't mean to startle you. You didn't. I answered too quickly. He stayed close a second too long, then stepped away like nothing happened. But my hand shook as I set the eggs on the counter. It was little things, the brush of his shoulder on the stairs, the way he lingered at the bottom of the hallway after dinner, like he was waiting for something. One night, I was folding laundry. In the living room, Mark was already in bed. Adam padded in barefoot, shirtless, eyes still heavy from sleep. You should be asleep, I said lightly. He sat on the couch across from me, eyes on my hands. You fold everything so carefully, he murmured. Old habit, or muscle memory. I tried to keep my eyes on the fabric, but I could feel his gaze heavy, knowing. That night, I didn't sleep. Another evening, I found him in the backyard, leaning against the fence. It was just after 10. Mark was out with friends. The night was still, except for the sound of crickets and the faint hum of traffic in the distance. I stepped outside barefoot, sweater wrapped tight. Couldn't sleep? He asked. No, he nodded, reached into his pocket, and held out an earbud. Listen. It was a soft instrumental track, piano notes layered with the sound of rain. Helps me when my brain won't stop, he said. We stood there in the dark, sharing one song between us. Our bodies not touching, but our presence pressed against each other in a way that was almost worse. When the song ended, he started to walk away. Stay, I whispered. He sat beside me on the porch swing, knees brushing. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just like being near you. I stared ahead, afraid that if I looked at him, I'd say something I couldn't take back. He didn't reach for me. He didn't have to. The wanting sat between us, electric, undeniable. Part 3: The blackout curtains. The week Mark left for his sales conference, I told myself I wouldn't be alone with Adam. I filled my schedule with errands, grocery runs, anything to keep us apart. It didn't matter. Friday night, I came home to find him fixing the screen door, the one that creaked every time I came in. He straightened up, rag in his hand, and the silence between us grew so thick. It felt like a third person in the room. You shouldn't be alone tonight, he said. I nodded. I didn't know if I wanted to be held or destroyed. It happened in the guest bedroom. The blackout curtains trapped the heat inside, the air heavy, unmoving. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his footsteps in the hall, slow, hesitant, like maybe he was deciding whether to turn back. The doorknob turned. He didn't close it all the way, just enough to make it wrong. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. I know. I could have stopped it, but something had been breaking inside me for years, and he was the only one who seemed to notice. When I reached for his wrist, he flinched just slightly, then let me pull him closer. "I'm not ready for this," I whispered. "Me neither." His weight came down slowly, like he was afraid I'd shatter. His hands weren't greedy. They were careful, reverent. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. But it wasn't true. I didn't want okay. I wanted to forget what okay even felt like. When he pressed into me, slow, deep, impossibly real, I bit my lip to keep from making a sound. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to know what it meant to him. I just wanted the numbness to crack open. The bed creaked softly beneath us, the only sound besides our uneven breathing. After we lay in silence. "We can pretend this didn't happen," he said. "I don't know what I want. I just wanted to be where you were." He left without closing the door. I sat there, wrapped in sweat and memory, knowing there was no way to explain this to anyone. Part 4. The aftertaste. He thought I was prepared for guilt. I wasn't prepared for the ache of having what I wasn't supposed to want and wanting it again. The next morning, I moved through my routine like a ghost, burned the eggs, forgot the coffee grounds, almost left the door unlocked. The guilt didn't come in a flood. It seeped in through small cracks in my husband's forehead kiss, in Adam's folded sweatshirt on the back of a chair, in my own reflection in the oven door. 3 days later, I saw Adam's truck parked down the street, not in front of the house, but close enough. I stepped into the rain, bare feet sinking into the grass, and stood at the end of the driveway. He didn't get out, he didn't drive away, and I didn't know which hurt more. That night, I sat in the laundry room, with a glass of wine, staring at the unfolded towels. I whispered his name into the empty air. We had been careful, too careful. And now the pretending was harder than the guilt. The next day, I found a note tucked inside the doorframe, damp from rain. "I know it can't happen again, but I don't regret it. Not for 1 second." I pressed it to my chest and whispered into the empty hallway. "I don't know if I want to stop, or just stop hating myself for not." Part 5. The return days passed. A week. Silence stretched until it hurt. Then one night, I was in the garage, reorganizing shelves just to keep moving. The door creaked. Boots on concrete. "I wasn't going to come back," Adam said. "But you left your scarf in my truck." I turned. He was soaked, tense, jaw tight. "I've never hated wanting someone before," I whispered. "I didn't mean to wreck anything, but I can't unfeel it." I reached for the scarf, careful not to touch his skin. If I did, we wouldn't stop. The next morning, my daughter stared at me in the hallway. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Kids can sense cracks, even if they don't know the shape of them. That night, I sat by the window, Adam's scarf wrapped around me. It still smelled like him, like cedar and heat and guilt. "I've lived with guilt before," I whispered into the dark. "But not like this. Not when it tastes like comfort." Somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not really. Part 6. Before Adam. There were other cracks in my marriage, small ones. Hairline fractures that never made a sound but still spread. Mark wasn't cruel. He wasn't neglectful in the way people whisper about. He was elsewhere. Some men cheat with bodies. Mark cheated with absence. Dinner was a place for his phone. Weekends were for catching up on work. Birthdays and anniversaries arrived without ceremony. Just a polite "love you" before bed. A tea first. I told myself this was adulthood, that fire fades, love matures, comfort replaces urgency. But the truth is, comfort had turned into invisibility. I was a framed photo on his desk, a grocery list on the fridge, a shape in the bed beside him. One night months before Adam moved in, I came downstairs for water and found Mark asleep in the recliner, the TV flickering across his face. I stood there in the dark and felt nothing. No pull to cover him with a blanket, no ache of affection, just the quiet realization that I could disappear for days and he might not notice until the laundry piled up. That thought stayed with me. It wasn't a decision. Not yet. But it was the first step toward a door I didn't know I'd walk through. Part 7. The weight of waiting. After that night in the guest room, Adam and I moved like two people orbiting the same planet, pretending not to see the gravity pulling us in. If Mark was home, Adam kept his distance. If Mark was gone, he still kept his distance, but not in a way that felt safe. It was a calculated distance, one that made me feel his absence more than his presence. I'd catch glimpses of him through the kitchen window, fixing his truck, cutting wood, leaning against the fence with a cigarette he never actually lit. Every sighting was an unspoken question, every avoidance was an answer I didn't want to hear. One night, it rained so hard the gutters overflowed. The backyard was a lake. Mark was asleep upstairs. I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out into the dark, and there he was, drenched, hoodie plastered to his skin, standing just far enough from the porch light to be shadow. He didn't wave. He didn't move. Just stood there, watching. I pressed my palm to the glass, and for one split second, I thought he'd cross the yard. He didn't. Part 8. The second Timite was weeks before it happened again, long enough for me to almost believe we'd stopped it. It was a Sunday afternoon. Mark was out playing golf. The house was still. I was in the living room reading when the floor creaked behind me. "You left this in the laundry," Adam said. He held up one of my scarves, not the one from his truck. Another one. I reached for it, but he didn't let go right away. Our fingers touched, and I swear the air between us thickened, like the oxygen had been replaced with something heavier. "We said it wouldn't happen again," I whispered. "You said that." It wasn't anger in his voice. It was truth. We didn't make it to the guest room this time. It happened right there, on the living room floor, sunlight streaming through the blinds, slicing our bodies into pieces of light and shadow. It wasn't careful like before. It was faster, hungrier, the kind of wanting you can't disguise as an accident. When it was over, I sat against the couch, knees pulled to my chest, trying to catch my breath. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, but my throat burned with something I couldn't name, because this time, there would be no pretending it was a moment of weakness. This was a choice. Part 9. The unrevealing. After that, everything in my life started to split. Mark's touch felt foreign. His smile looked like something practiced in a mirror. And Adam became the shadow in every room. He didn't push. He didn't chase. But he was there, in the air, in the walls, in the way my body lit up at the sound of his boots on the stairs. The guilt was no longer about crossing a line. It was about knowing I wanted to cross it again. I started having dreams about him. Not always sexual. Sometimes we were just driving, or sitting on the porch, or lying in the dark with our hands barely touching. But every dream ended the same way, with me waking up to Mark's steady breathing beside me and feeling like I was living in someone else's skin. Part 10. The door that stays open. Last time it happened, it wasn't planned. Mark was away for the weekend. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, making tea. Adam walked in without knocking. We both froze. Then, without a word, he took the mug from my hand, set it on the counter, and kissed me, not cautious, not asking, just claiming the space between us like it had been his all along. When it was over, he didn't say goodbye, didn't promise to stop, didn't promise anything. He just left the door half open behind him. And I knew it would never really close. Part 11. The fracture. You don't hear. Mark wasn't stupid. People imagine betrayal as some big discovery, a lipstick stain, a suspicious text, a stranger's name whispered in sleep. But real betrayal, it's quieter. It's the way your spouse watches you a beat too long before answering. The way their "how was your day" starts to sound like an investigation instead of affection. Mark never confronted me outright, but his questions got sharper. His touch became infrequent, not from disinterest, but as if he was afraid of what he might feel in my skin. One night, he asked if I was happy. Just that. I lied, and it hurt worse than any truth I could have given him. Part 12. Adam's vanishing act. The thing about someone like Adam is, you think they're permanent because they're unforgettable, but unforgettable doesn't mean they stay. One morning, I looked out the kitchen window and his truck was gone. By afternoon, so was he. And oh, goodbye. No explanation. Just absence, the same absence I had been drowning in before him, only heavier now because I knew what presence could feel like. For weeks, I'd catch myself glancing at the driveway whenever I heard an engine, half hoping, half dreading, but he never came back. Part 13. The ghost in the room. Mark and I are still married. We still share a bed. We still exchange the same polite "love you" before sleep. From the outside, nothing has changed, but every room in this house remembers. The living room remembers the sunlight that cut us into pieces. The guest room remembers the way we held our breath. The kitchen remembers the unfinished tea, still warm when he kissed me. And me? I remember everything. Some nights, I dream he's at the window again, rain falling, hoodie clinging to his skin, not moving, not leaving, and I wake up with my heart in my throat, not from fear, but from the terrifying truth that if he walked in right now, if he closed that half-open door, I would take it again.